Hello everyone, we are Evelien Vlasserold and Sally, and on behalf of the team, we will present to you today our abstract, Unlocking Web and Social Media Archives for Humanities Research, a Critical Reflection. So this presentation discusses the results of a survey targeted at researchers that was done in the context of the PROMISE project. This project aimed to develop a pilot for web archiving for Belgium on the federal level. And from within this PROMISE project, we also realized that archiving of social media and thus born digital data in Belgium is an important part of our cultural heritage. From the context of the PROMISE project, a new project emerged, BESOCIAL. In this project, we endeavor to develop a sustainable strategy for archiving and preserving social media in Belgium in order to document our online national heritage for future generations. So when you take a look at the timeline, you can see that within the PROMISE project, a survey was conducted related to the user requirements with 154 respondents. If you then take a look further, we see that within the project of BESOCIAL, there are also some in-depth interviews that we have conducted related to personas that were developed up front. So a list of personas was created to verify the needs of a broad range of stakeholders, being researchers, cultural heritage professionals, publishers, policymakers, and other potential end users. Currently, we have conducted 6 in-depth interviews. From this current running BESOCIAL project, we also joined another bunch of existing initiatives linked to web archiving and social media archiving. One of them is the WAC20, where we have 2 team members that are represented in some working groups. And this WAC20 network promotes national and transnational research to understand the history of transnational web domains and of transnational events on the web. In addition to our contribution at WAC20, we also plan to host a workshop at RESAL in the future related to the user requirements. So in this presentation, we explore the requirements of researchers working with web archives, and we want to outline how they perceive the limitations and the possibilities of using the archived web as a data resource. For this study, we have 3 research questions that are underlying. The first one being, what is a web or social media archive according to researchers? The second one, how are web or social media archives used now? And the third one, what challenges do researchers perceive when using web or social media archives? We will go into further detail on these 3 questions in the next couple of slides. So the first thing we also want to discuss is the methodology. So we try to answer this research questions by using a mixed methodology of quantitative survey and qualitative in-depth interviews. In the survey, we asked researchers with and without experience of working with web archives for, amongst others, the search functionalities, descriptive metadata, selection and access criteria they require. The survey also requested basic demographic information, such as gender, nationality, highest level of education, the current job role, and so forth. And we also questioned the archival intelligence by using the scale of Jekyll and Torrance. For the interviews, we actually started from the personas that were created in the Corpus project and the data that was collected in the US National Archives. By using these personas, we recruited 6 potential users of a social media archive, and we talked with them about their user requirements. For the sample description, in the survey, we had 154 respondents, and of which 65% already used web archives and 44% did not yet. In the in-depth interviews, we started from the personas, and you can see in the slides which personas that we used. I will not go into further detail into this, but you can always take a look. So the first question that we try to answer is, what is a web archive according to researchers? And here we see that in general, our interviewees said that they require a social media or web archive to be more than just a data repository. They argued for a stronger inclusion of the academic field in selection decisions and policies at archives, and consider an archiving institution an ideal scenario as a research partner. This research partner or assistant should help in making content queryable. So especially for exploratory research, the idea of a classic search interface should be dropped in favor of other types of interface that open up and make searchable archived social media. For example, an interface based on visualizations. Social media archives should also be extensively documented. Interestingly, for some, this should also include references to certain methodologies or certain software or tool sets that can be used to analyze the collection, as well as to articles or research papers that partially used the collection in the past. Interviews also felt that the archiving institutions should support researchers to the fullest extent as possible. This is important as research often lacks the necessary digital skills or domain knowledge, or neglect or are unaware of the big data and legal features of most social media archives. For the second question, how are web archives used now? We saw in the survey that as the first thing that most of the researchers are not aware of the existence of web archives. So this is already a big point of interest. And then for people who are, or researchers who are using web archives at the moment, we saw that the most and foremost functionalities they are using are the search engine and the possibility to download the data and search for it in the engine. But what we see now is that not a lot of web archives do have a full text search at the moment, although we see in the survey that they found it very important. But full text search is something that a lot of web archives are struggling with and still have not included as a functionality. So also related to this, we see that we can go more towards another kind of visualizing the data. For example, in the Shine interface, it works more like with trend lines in the web archive, and this should be more appealing to the researchers. The third question is, what challenges do researchers perceive when using web archives? So the top 3 challenges that researchers perceive are all related to searching and accessing archived web material and how they were selected. So these 3 were included challenges in accessing the data, a lack of appropriate descriptive information about the web archives, and also the difficulty in finding relevant materials. This corresponds actually with findings of Jane Winters, who states that the research on web archives is strongly delimited by the conditions of access, use and reuse, and she identifies 4 distinct types of access, which you can also see in the slides.
So, based on the results of the research that Eveline has just outlined, we would like to be able to provide some recommendations. Firstly, more publicity towards academic researchers is very important. We think that it is important that these institutes should realise that there is still a lacking awareness surrounding the existence of international web archives. The fact that a significant segment of the research community in the humanities and social sciences is still unaware of web archives is also something that became apparent in other research projects, and that could be mitigated by heightening the awareness of potential users via more targeted communications and marketing activities. In short, more communication about and promotion of the web archive is necessary. Secondly, often researchers are not aware of what archives exactly contain or how they can be used. A solution here could be to supplement the metadata and provenance data of the archived collections with references or links to papers or articles that have been used that have used the collection as research data, or to link up to suitable methods and software that could be used to analyze a collection. Involving the research community in the selection process of which content needs to be archived could also mitigate this lack of awareness. Furthermore, it can ensure that collections contain relevant search data for academia. And here you can see the first steps towards a crowdsourcing project to involve researchers and other members of the public in the BESOCIAL Media Archive that we're currently setting up. Fourthly, the computational turn, or the increased incorporation of advanced computational research methods that are able to draw on and process large data sets into fields which have generally dealt with considerably more limited collections of evidence, and which generated and processed such evidence mainly through manual methods, also poses challenges to social or humanities researchers. In this context, more attention should be paid to heightening the digital and computational literacy of such researchers. Next, archives should try to remove as many of the hurdles as possible that hinder researchers in using archive data. For example, without being able to download the results or even a summary report of the URLs returned in a keyword search, additional self-guided exploratory work by researchers using other existing analysis tools becomes impossible. Further work on archive user interfaces is also needed. In contrast to using web search engines, where users' intentions are mainly informational, then transactional, and lastly, navigational. The user's intentions when consulting an archive are mainly navigational, then information, and lastly, transactional. We also consider creating exploratory interfaces based on visualizations and Schneiderman's mantra for visual information seeking: overview first, zoom and filter, then details on demand. And lastly, we want to point out that various of our interviewees not only requested clear and exhaustive descriptions for each archive collections, for example, outlining provenance information, but they are also interested in description of what the specific collection does contain. For example, listing of the websites or social media challenges that could not be crawled. So within Belgium, as part of KBR, the Royal Library of Belgium, we've been trying to see born digital collections such as web and social media archives alongside other digital collections such as digitized newspapers or bibliographic metadata. With this in mind, we've been looking towards the international GLAM, Galleries, Libraries, Archives and Museums lab community, as labs could be seen as experimental space for data access analysis. At the KBR, we're working with two projects. Firstly, Data.KBR, which is facilitating the data level access to KBR's digitized and born digital collections. And then secondly, the Digital Research Lab, which is a lab for text and data mining on both the KBR's digitized and born digital collections. In this way, through this combined approach, we hope we will be able to improve the research access to web archives for all. So here you can see a number of useful links that we've used throughout through the presentation, and thank you very much for your time on behalf of the whole BESOCIAL team.